transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, listen, this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. In gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time. May it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful efforts, our wholehearted mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. The incense in the censer now is burning, all the Dharma realm in every place auspicious clouds appearing, our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Homage to the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and great Bodhisattvas. Homage to the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma and sagely Sangha, throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empty space and 3 periods of time. Homage to the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya, honored teacher Buddha, Manjushri, great wisdom Bodhisattva, universal great conduct Bodhisattva, all Dharma guiding Deva Bodhisattva, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and sword great vow Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great pure sea-like Bodhisattvas. Please sit down. Namo Ratnachayaya, Namo Aryabharokiteshvaraya, Bodhisattvaya, Mahasattvaya, Mahakarunikaya, Om Sarvarabhaya, Suranadasya, Namoskitvahi, Maharyabharokiteshvaraya, Namo Narakindehi, Mahavaswami, Sarvara Shubhamajiyam, Sarva Satvaya Swaha, Om Siddhyanto Mantrapadaya Swaha, Om Siddhyanto Mantrapadaya Swaha. The Dharma body is bringing morning light in concentration. My heart is at peace. A half smile is born on my lips. This is a new day, and I vow to go through it in mindfulness. The sun of wisdom has risen, shining in every direction. Noble Sangha diligently bring your mind into meditation. Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya, Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya, Namo Shakyamuni Buddhaya. Heart of the Prajnaparamita, the Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the deep course of Prajnaparamita, shed light on the five skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame ill beingness and shoddy. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. The same is true with feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. Their Parasamgate Bodhiswaha Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhiswaha Gate Gate Parasamgate Bodhiswaha. Namo Amitabhaya Tathagata Yata Amrita Bhavi Amrita Siddham Bhavi Amrita Vikant Krita Vikranta Gamini Gagana Kilta Kare Swaha. Namo Amitabhaya Tathagata Yata Amrita Bhavi Amrita Siddham Bhavi Amrita Vikrante Amrita Vikranta Gamini Gagana Kilta Kare Swaha. Namo Amitabhaya Kataya Tadyata Amrita Bhavi Amrita Siddham Bhavi Amrita Vikrante Amrita Vikranta Gamini Gagana Kilta Kare Swaha. Stephanie, you can step up, please. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good afternoon. It's already afternoon. So today we have an auspicious occasion for Miss Stephanie taking the 3 refuge and 5 precepts. As you've heard me discuss it before, we've discussed how or what the precepts are, right? That they are more or less just training wheels for us, for the practitioner.
that they're not necessarily rules or commandments per se, but they are common mindful regulations that you would have in life in order to be a better person. And the precepts are simple. They're pretty mundane for the most part, right? It's abstain from taking life, abstain from stealing, abstain from sexual misconduct, abstain from lying, and abstaining from intoxicants. And the Buddha describes these precepts as faultless gifts, right? And they are gifts of fearlessness that they provide. And so for those that follow these precepts, the Buddha says that they become dear and respected to both human and non-human beings. And so we can think of the people that we interact with on a daily basis, right? If you have someone in your life who does follow the 5 precepts, who you know and trust and know that they're not going to try to kill you or try to steal from you or sleep with your spouse or lie to you, because in our unfortunate world where we are surrounded by all sorts of ignorance and greed and anger, where everything is chaotic and there's practically no one to trust these days, right? You can at least trust that one person who has taken precepts. And a lot of people think that Buddhism is just about our meditation practice, about sitting meditation. But in reality, Buddhism is first and foremost to develop our mind by working on our morality and concentration, wisdom. And the reason why it's because all the unwholesome and the habitual thoughts that we constantly give rise to are always manifesting themselves into our speech, our thoughts, speech and actions, right? So morality is a way for us to refrain or abstain from doing those things that can lead to suffering in our life and in the lives of others. So in our daily life, we come in contact with various sense objects through our eyes and ears and nose, tongue and body. But most of what we expose ourselves to comes from what we see on the internet or in movies or on TV, right? Even the type of places you may go to, whether you go to parties or bars or clubs or whatever you may go, right? They give rise to a lot of toxic emotions, a lot of unwholesome thoughts within us. But they revolve around things like sex and violence and material pursuits. And constant exposure to these toxic sense objects can lead to more suffering, to obsession and addiction. So we need to find a way that will help us not commit those unwholesome actions. And we use and take the precepts to protect ourselves. Upholding the precepts builds the energy of mindfulness within us to be more aware of our thoughts and our speech and our actions, and to stop us from committing those unwholesome deeds. So really the precepts are ways to keep yourself accountable for your thoughts, speech, and actions. Right, we've discussed yesterday during meditation class how we have multiple checkpoints that we can check ourselves, right, when it comes to the things that we think, say, and do. Since everything starts at the mind as a thought, right, that's your first checkpoint. So if you're in a difficult situation or if you're in the midst of an argument or whatever it may be, and if you observe your mind carefully, be mindful and aware of how the mind is working, what it's thinking of, right, how it's reacting in the mind, that's your first checkpoint. Because if your mind is chaotic and it's thinking unwholesome, negative things, then you can say, oh, I should probably stop thinking. Let's invite the triple jewels to descend to the Dharma assembly to certify and witness this auspicious ceremony. Then you should invite the myriad divine spirits to guard the way and protect the precepts.
With incense and flowers we greet, with incense and flowers we entreat. I, Stephanie, and all earnestly and reverently request Shakyamuni Buddha, teaching host of the Saha world, Amitabha Buddha, who leads us to the land of ultimate bliss, Maitreya Buddha of the future, and all Buddhas to the end of empty space, please remember your fundamental vows. Gather and shine your lights of kindness to certify this act of taking the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. With incense and flowers we greet, with incense and flowers we entreat. I, Stephanie, and all earnestly and reverently request the Mahayana and Theravada vehicles and Vinaya treasury, the 5 categories and 3 collections, the Praktimoksha code of liberation, the 12 divisions of the scriptures, the provisional and actual teachings, the profound Dharma jewels, and leaving desire and true purity. Heedful and wholehearted, we return our lives in worship. With incense and flowers we greet, with incense and flowers we entreat. I, Stephanie, and all earnestly and reverently request Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Great Strength Bodhisattva, Manjushri Bodhisattva, Universal Worthy Bodhisattva, Earth Store Bodhisattva, and all great Bodhisattvas of the Pure Sea Vast Assembly. Bodhisattvas, please remember your fundamental vows. Gather and shine your light of kindness to certify this act of taking the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. With incense and flowers we greet, with incense and flowers we entreat. I, Stephanie, and all earnestly and reverently request the luminous assembly of gods and the transitory existence of the various heavens, Brahma, Chakra, the 4 celestial kings, the earth devas who guard the precepts. Please remember your fundamental vows. Preside at this ceremony and protect the taking of refugees and precepts.
You have now invited and requested the triple jewels and the myriad spirits to come to certify, witness, guard, and protect the ceremony. Now they have bestowed kindness and descended, filling up all the Dharma seats. Before all of you take the 3 refuge and the 5 precepts, you should first gather in grief and sorrow, and with utmost earnestness repent all transgressions you have done in the past. When the 3 karmas are undefiled, then you qualify to take the 3 refuge and the 5 precepts. I will now speak the great sutra gathas for your sake. You should listen to what I say and contemplate the meanings and principles of the verses in the sutra in your mind. You should make the resolve and vow to repent the past mistakes and cultivate good merit in the future, and never again do any evils.
All the evil karma that I have made in the past because of the beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, by body, speech, and mind, and word and deed, I now repent of all entirely. All the evil karma that I have made in the past because of the beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, by body, speech, and mind, and word and deed, I now repent of all entirely. All the evil karma that I have made in the past because of the beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, by body, speech, and mind, and word and deed, I now repent of all entirely.
Good men and good women, after you have repented and reformed with utmost sincerity, your body and mind are pure, and your karmic offenses are destroyed and eradicated. Today, the community has gathered to give support to those who will vow to go for the refuge to the 3 jewels and the 5 precepts. You should have had the chance to learn about and observe the way of understanding and love that has been handed down to us by teachers over many centuries. And today, you have made the decision to go for refuge to the 3 jewels and receive the 5 precepts. To take the refuge in the 3 jewels is to turn to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for protection. The Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are the 3 precious gems, and to take refuge in the Buddha is to take refuge in the awakened one, who has the ability to show us the way in this life. To take refuge in the Dharma is to take refuge in the way of understanding, love, and compassion. And to take refuge in the Sangha is to take refuge in a community that practices according to the path of understanding, love, and compassion, and lives in an awakened way. The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are present in every quarter of the universe, as well as in every person and all other species. To go for refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha also means to have confidence in our own ability to be awakened, to develop and manifest understanding and love in ourselves, and to practice the way for ourselves and for our family, our community, and the world. Now, it is time for you to recite the taking of the 3 refuges.
I, Stephanie, to the end of my life, I vow to take refuge with the Buddha. To the end of my life, I vow to take refuge in the Dharma. To the end of my life, I vow to take refuge in the Sangha. To the end of my life, I vow to take refuge in the Precepts. I, Stephanie, to the end of my life, I vow to take refuge with the Buddha. To the end of my life, I vow to take refuge in the Dharma. To the end of my life, I vow to take refuge in the Sangha. To the end of my life, I vow to take refuge in the Precepts. I, Stephanie, to the end of my life, I vow to take refuge with the Buddha. To the end of my life, I vow to take refuge in the Dharma. To the end of my life, I vow to take refuge in the Sangha. To the end of my life, I vow to take refuge in the Precepts. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the Buddha, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the heavenly demon Mahaspada, and so forth. I take refuge with the thus come one's most true, equal, and right enlightenment. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the Buddha, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the heavenly demon Mahaspada, and so forth. I take refuge with the thus come one's most true, equal, and right enlightenment. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the Buddha, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the heavenly demon Mahaspada, and so forth. I take refuge with the thus come one's most true, equal, and right enlightenment. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the Dharma, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the scriptures and texts of those outside of the way. I take refuge with the three treasures and the 12 divisions of all the scriptures and spoken by the thus come one. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the Dharma, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the scriptures and texts of those outside of the way. I take refuge with the three treasures and the 12 divisions of all the scriptures spoken by the thus come ones. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the Dharma, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the scriptures and texts of those outside of the way. I take refuge with the three treasures and 12 divisions of all the scriptures spoken by the thus come one. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the Sangha, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the improper assemblies of those outside of the way. I take refuge with the Sangha, the pure field of blessings. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the Sangha, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the improper assemblies of those outside of the way. I take refuge with the Sangha, the pure field of blessings. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the Sangha, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the improper assemblies of those outside of the way. I take refuge with the Sangha and the pure field of blessings. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the precepts, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the deviant precepts of those outside of the way. I take refuge with the prakta moksha spoken by the thus come one. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the precepts, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the deviant precepts of those outside of the way. I take refuge with the prakta moksha spoken by the thus come one. I do this because of my world-honored one's great compassion. I, Stephanie, having taken refuge with the precepts, I would rather give up my body and life than ever take refuge with the deviant precepts of those outside of the way. I take refuge with the Moksha spoken by the thus come when I do this because of my world honor one's great compassion.
Disciple, you have formally received the three refuge. Receiving them will enable you to see the three jewels in your own heart and bring them into your daily life. Today, you have become students of the Awakened One and have made the vow to live in an awakened life. Beginning from today, you will apply your mind of learning about the practicing the way of understanding, love, and compassion, which means to nourish the ability to love and understand within yourself. You will also go for refuge to your Sangha in order to learn and practice, and you will attend days and retreats of mindfulness, meditation, and recitation of the precepts and other activities of your Sangha. The three refuges have been transmitted to you, and your Dharma name was chosen by myself, Venerable Thích Quang and Venerable Abbot Quang. You should take refuge in your teacher and your Sangha to learn and practice the path. Disciples, now is the time to transmit the 5 precepts, and you have the capacity to protect life and make it beautiful. The 5 precepts encourage us in the direction of peace, joy, liberation, and awakening. They are the foundation for individual happiness and the happiness of family and society. If we practice according to the 5 precepts, we are already on the path of a bodhisattva. The 5 precepts protect us and help us avoid making mistakes and creating suffering, fear, and despair. Practicing these precepts, you are able to build peace and happiness in ourselves and our family, and joy and peace in our society. You should pervasively condition all the states throughout the Dharma realm and resolve to bring forth an unsurpassed Bodhi mind. Receive and uphold each and every precept. Now you should answer my questions truthfully. First, from now until the end of your life, refraining from killing, not to let others kill, and not to support any act of killing in the world is the laity precept. Can you uphold this precept?
Yes, I can uphold it.
Secondly, from now until the end of your life, refraining from stealing and not to possess anything that should belong to others is the laity precept. Can you uphold this precept?
Yes, I can uphold it.
Thirdly, from now until the end of your life, refraining from sexual misconduct and learning ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society is the laity precept. Can you uphold this precept?
Yes, I can uphold it.
Fourthly, from now until the end of your life, refraining from telling lies and to speak truthfully with words that inspire self-confidence, joy, and hope, not spreading news that you do not know to be certain, and will not criticize or condemn things of which you are not sure, and to refrain from uttering words that can cause division or discord is the laity precept. Can you uphold this precept?
Yes, I can uphold it.
Fifthly, from now until the end of your life, refraining from taking intoxicants, both physical and mental, for yourself, your family, and society by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming is the laity precept. Can you uphold this precept?
Yes, I can uphold it.
Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So today we pause and reflect on the 3 refuge and the 5 precepts. Because in a world that rarely stops, rarely listens, and rarely asks us to look deeply, we have chosen to stand still together. You have come here not to acquire something new, not to add another identity or belief, but to make a conscious turning of the heart. And this turning is what we call taking refuge. This turning is what we call practice. What happens today may look simple from the outside. Words are spoken, vows are made, a ceremony begins and ends, but inwardly, something far more meaningful is taking place. So today marks a moment of trust in your own capacity to wake up, to live with care, and to walk this human life with awareness rather than habit. Taking refuge does not mean withdrawing from the world. It does not mean escaping difficulty or bypassing pain, or pretending that suffering will disappear. In the Buddhist teaching, refuge means learning how to stand firmly within life as it is, uncertain, fragile, beautiful, and unfinished. So when we take refuge in the Buddha, you're not worshiping a distant figure, or an unreachable ideal. You're not pleading allegiance to a statue, a story, or some mythic past. You're acknowledging something deeply intimate and very alive, that awakening is possible for us ordinary human beings. And the Buddha was someone who experienced confusion, fear, aging, illness, and loss just as we do. But what distinguished him was not perfection, but honesty. He refused to look away. He trusted that clarity could arise through direct seeing and contemplating. So to take refuge in the Buddha is to say, I trust the possibility of awakening. Not someday, not elsewhere, but here, in this very body, in this very mind. It is an act of confidence, not arrogance. It is the quiet courage to believe that wisdom and compassion are not reserved for saints, monks, or nuns, or special people out there, but are potentials within each of us, waiting to be cultivated and nourished. And when we take refuge in the Dharma, you're choosing truth over comfort. The Dharma is not a belief system designed to reassure us when life feels difficult. It is a path of understanding, sometimes gentle, sometimes uncompromising. It asks us to look directly at how suffering arises, how it is sustained, and how it can be released and eradicated. And the Dharma teaches impermanence, not to make us pessimistic, right? But to free us from clinging. It teaches unsatisfactoriness, not to make life bleak, but to help us to stop demanding that it be something it cannot be. It teaches non-self, not to erase us, but to loosen the rigid stories that we cling to about who we think we are. And to take refuge in the Dharma is to commit to learning from your own life. Every moment of joy becomes a teacher. Every moment of loss becomes a teacher. Every moment of confusion becomes an invitation to look more deeply rather than to turn away. And this refuge asks for sincerity. It asks for patience. And it rewards us not with certainty, but with freedom. And when we take refuge in the Sangha, you're acknowledging something profoundly human, that we do not awaken alone. We need one another, not because we're weak, but because we are rational beings. We forget, we lose our way, we fall back into old habits. And sometimes this presence of others is what gently reminds us to return. The Sangha is not a group of perfect or perfected people. Right? It is a community of imperfect human beings who are willing to practice together, who are willing to be seen, who are willing to support one another without pretending to have it all figured out or to have all the answers. To take refuge in the Sangha means allowing yourself to belong, not in an identity, but to a shared intention, to live with awareness, compassion, and responsibility. It is a refuge of humility, and it is a refuge of trust. And these refuges are not external shelters, right? They are inner orientations. They are ways of standing in the world. And from this foundation, we come to the 5 precepts. And the precepts are often misunderstood as these moral rules or prohibitions. But in the Buddhist tradition, they are understood as training of the heart and mind. They are not commandments imposed from above. They are vows that are freely taken, grounded in wisdom and compassion. So the first precept of refraining from harm, when you understand this precept to refrain from taking life or harming life, you are making a quiet but radical commitment that life matters. Not only human life, but all forms of life. Not only lives that are easy to love, but also lives that are inconvenient, unfamiliar, and fragile. This precept begins outwardly, but it always returns inward. It asks us to notice the ways that we harm ourselves through harsh judgment, through neglect, or violence of thought, and to extend compassion there as well. To keep this precept is to practice reverence. The second precept of refraining from taking what is not freely given, or refraining from stealing, when we undertake this precept to refrain from taking what is not freely given, you are practicing respect for trust and for the dignity of others. And this precept is not only about theft in a literal sense, but it is also about subtle forms of taking time, attention, credit, or emotional energy without care or consent. It invites us to cultivate contentment, to live from a sense of enough, to loosen the grasping that so often fuels dissatisfaction and suffering. The third precept is to refrain from sexual misconduct or wise conduct, or to have wise conduct in relationships. When you undertake the precepts to refrain from sexual misconduct, you are honoring the vulnerability that exists wherever there is an intimacy. And this precept is not about shame or repression, it is about care. It asks that our desires be guided by responsibility, by honesty and respect. That we do not use others to fill our emptiness or void or loneliness. At its heart, this precept is about not causing harm through intimacy, physically, emotionally, or psychologically. The fourth precept is about wise speech. And so when we undertake this precept to refrain from false speech, you're protecting something precious, trust. Because speech has immense power. Words can heal or wound, can connect or divide. And this precept invites us to speak truthfully, kindly, and at the right time. It also invites us to recognize when silence is the most compassionate response we can give. And to practice this precept is to become attentive to intention, not to just what we say, but why we say it in the first place. The fifth precept, refraining from taking intoxicants. When we take this precept to refrain from intoxicants that cloud the mind, you're choosing presence over escape. This precept is not about moral judgment. It's about clarity. It's about valuing awareness enough to protect it. It asks us to notice how we often try to numb or distract or avoid what is uncomfortable and to gently return instead. So to keep this precept is to say, I want to meet my life directly. And none of these precepts, of course, are kept or will be kept perfectly, right? No one here lives without making mistakes. This is not failure. This is simply just human condition. And so the practice is not about perfection. Practice is noticing and taking responsibility, and to return again and again to that awareness, to that care, and to that intention. So what you're doing today is not extremely dramatic, right? There are no fireworks going on. There's no guarantees of happiness. There's no promises of ease. But yet it is very meaningful. So you are choosing to live deliberately. You're choosing to align your actions with your deepest values. You're choosing a path of wakefulness in an often unexamined world. So from this day forward, there will still be joy and sorrow, right? Gain and loss, praise and blame. The world will not become easier because of this ceremony, but you may find that you meet the world just a little differently. So may the Buddha remind you of what is possible. May the Dharma guide you when you are lost. May the Sangha support you when you forget. May the life you live from this moment on, imperfect, sincere, and awake, be of benefit to all beings. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Go and continue making the vow.
I vow to take across the numberless living beings. I vow to cut off the endless afflictions. I vow to study the countless Dharma doors. I vow to realize the Supreme Buddha way. I vow to take across living beings of my own nature. I vow to cut off the afflictions of my own nature. I vow to study the Dharma doors of my own nature. I vow to realize the Buddha way of my own nature.
Please repeat 3 times something how that involved.
I vow to take across the numberless living beings. I vow to cut off the endless afflictions. I vow to study the countless Dharma doors. I vow to realize the Supreme Buddha way. I vow to take across living beings of my own nature. I vow to cut off the afflictions of my own nature. I vow to study the Dharma doors of my own nature. I vow to realize the Buddha way of my own nature. I vow to take across the numberless living beings. I vow to cut off the endless afflictions. I vow to study the countless Dharma doors. I vow to realize the Supreme Buddha way. I vow to take across living beings of my own nature. I vow to cut off the afflictions of my own nature. I vow to study the Dharma doors of my own nature. I vow to realize the Buddha way of my own nature.
Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So Stephanie today has taken the 3 refuge and 5 precepts, and per tradition is also given a Dharma name. So the name that we transmit to you today is Hui Kan. Hui is also part of our temple name, Hui, but Hui means wisdom, and Kan means diligence. And so typically when we think of Dharma names to provide, they are characteristics that we see within those practitioners. And the characteristic that we see in you is diligent effort, and the desire to learn and to practice and to ask questions, to question things, to contemplate things. And that's one of the most important things that we can do in life, is to question, right? Even things that may seem mundane or simple, or have an assuming answer, right? The same way that we ask ourselves, when we question ourselves and we're contemplating why, right? We may have a reactionary response to something, but that response is simply out of habit, right? We may not truly know why we respond in that way, but because of the habitual characteristics that some of us possess, we automatically answer things in a certain way or see things in a certain way that may not be correct or true. And so even questioning our own responses is important, and questioning our own beliefs and feelings and ideals. And it's only through this questioning that we start to truly get the answers that bring us wisdom, and not just subjective or even objective knowledge. Knowledge cannot enlighten us. Knowledge can inform us. Knowledge can help us seek correct answers and the ways of practice, but it's only through wisdom, true realized wisdom, that actually causes those sparks of enlightenment to kind of show up. And so those sparks that we want to utilize and continue sparking until it's an entire fire, and we burn down all of our suffering, and all we're left with is a mind that is clear and free of any dissatisfaction, of any suffering. So Hui Kan, welcome, congratulations. All All right, so we will kind of go ahead and continue closing the ceremony. Please join us all in chanting together in the transfer of merit. May all beings without limit, without end, have a share in the merit just now made, and in whatever other merits I have made, those who are dear and kind to me, beginning with my mother and father, whom I have seen or never seen, and others neutral or hostile beings established in the cosmos, the three realms, the four modes of birth, with 5, 1, or 4 aggregates, wandering on from realm to realm. If they know of my dedication of merit, may they themselves rejoice, and if they do not, may the devas inform them by reason of their rejoicing in my gift of merit. May all beings always live happily, free from animosity. May they attain nirvana, and their radiant hopes be fulfilled. Please rise. We'll bow together for the refuge. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. Dwelling in the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty in the world. Dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light that supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Taking refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to help all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love. Taking refuge in the Dharma, in myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation. Taking refuge in the Sangha, in myself I aspire to help all people build fourfold communities to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Reciting the sutras, practice
practicing the way of awareness gives rise to benefits without limits. We vow to share the fruits with all beings who offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path.
There we go. Your certificate has the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts on there. So placing somewhere where you meditate and recite daily to remind yourself of the self-promises you've made to yourself. And then now that you're an official member, you have the member sash. So congratulations. Thank you.